James Morris from the New South Wales Rural Fire Service joins me now for an update. James, thanks for your time this morning. How many fires are burning across the state this morning?
Yeah, good morning, Tim. As you mentioned, 106 bush and grass fires continue to burn across New South Wales. Half of those still yet to be contained. 7 fires remain at a watch and act alert level. We saw a fire in the early hours of this morning. That Gross Valley fire, which was burning just north of Blackheath, made a run through a valley and threatened a number of homes in and around that eastern part of Blackheath. That since has been downgraded to a watch and act, with that threat easing, but firefighters protecting a number of homes in that area, obviously on top of the catastrophic conditions we saw right across parts of New South Wales yesterday.
James, there's an extraordinary number of firefighters in the field at the moment, just days from Christmas, aren't there?
Yeah, there certainly are. So yesterday we saw around 3,000 firefighters in the field. On average, we've seen more than 2,000 firefighters. On top of that, hundreds of emergency services and community workers obviously working alongside each other to try and protect homes and support communities in this very tough time.
I think a lot of people are going to wake up with an air of relief this morning because it is a lot cooler than it was yesterday. And these cooler conditions are expected to stick around for a few days, which will be a great help for you guys.
Oh, look, it certainly will be. Obviously, terrible conditions we saw yesterday. We've got about 4 or 5 days worth of relief, more favourable conditions to be able to really work on strengthening and consolidating containment lines. Obviously, now that these fires are so large, burning in very remote and rugged terrain, our containment options will need to be broad. And obviously, a lot of these containment lines and extinguishment of the fire is simply just going to be heavy rainfall at some stage, which unfortunately isn't predicted until mid to late February.
Yeah, a little bit of rain this week, but not much that's going to make much of an impact at all. What about today? Where is the major focus?
So today's major focus will obviously be on our main fires of concern, being that Gospers Mountain fire, as well as that Gross Valley fire, rather, in the Blue Mountains, working down around then the Green Wattle fire, southwest of Sydney around Bargo, and then obviously our fires burning down on the south coast, the Curraween fire and that Tianjara fire burning out west of Sussex. And a lot of concern in those areas, given that they are very large, very active, and still burning very close to very heavily populated areas.
Have we had an update on any of the details regarding that man that was missing near Dargan?
Oh, Tim, not at this stage. Unfortunately, that man is still unaccounted for. As we see daylight come, obviously we'll get our building impact assessment crews, along with obviously other emergency services, to start going and inspecting the sites and see whether we can locate the man that is still unaccounted for.
It's been an extraordinary start to the bushfire season. Some of these fires have been burning since July. Have you got a count on how many properties have been destroyed to this point?
Look, at this stage, before we saw yesterday's conditions, we had close to 800 properties which have been destroyed, houses alone, with obviously outbuildings and other structures on top of that. Yesterday, we are expecting to see dozens of homes and other outbuildings destroyed. As we mentioned, those building impact assessment crews will be going into the field today. But obviously, given the large nature of what we saw yesterday with those fires, it could be some days before we have a true and accurate account as to the damage and destruction that was caused.
Finally, I know it's a bit of a broad brushstroke of a question, but what is the general advice coming out of headquarters to those affected and those that could be affected through the Christmas period?
Look, the biggest thing, obviously, we are seeing an ease of conditions, but still, please really think about your travel plans. Fires that we've seen, as you mentioned, since July, even on these calm and collected days with minimal wind and low temperatures, have really still taken runs and threatened homes just due to these dry conditions. So it's very important that you have a bushfire survival plan for your home, but it's also important if you're travelling to areas, make sure you have things like the Fires Near Me smartphone application. You have the live traffic app. You also put other plans into place as to, if your roads are cut, where will you go, what will you do in the event a fire threatens, and make sure, as you said, you continue to monitor the situation closely. And if you feel that you don't want to be in an area, or your heart's telling you probably shouldn't go, it's probably a good idea, and put those travel plans off until those conditions have eased, and fires are certainly a lot more contained than what they are.
Great advice, James. And I think just one thing before we leave is that advice to people: don't be one of those that want to go and see a fire as a spectator, because basically this can be a real hindrance to those trying to put the fires out.
Yeah, it certainly can be. And we obviously get Tim, a lot of people at roadblocks trying to get through, as you said, sightseers trying to get through. And as we're seeing these conditions really elevate and escalate, we see those threats, especially very close to property. So it's really important that people stay away from these areas, allow emergency services to really undertake the accurate inspections of those areas and try and extinguish fires and make those areas safe, especially where we do have burning debris and trees very close to roadways. Obviously, unfortunately, we saw 2 firefighters killed in recent days due to falling trees. And this is really why we tell people don't go into these areas, because they are unsafe. All it takes is one small tree or a large tree, and it makes a difference between life and death, unfortunately.
Thanks for joining us this morning, James.
You're welcome, Tim. Thanks for your time this morning.